Well, the internet is practically begging for a debate around vaccines between Dr. Peter Hotez, challenging Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about vaccines in a sort of civilized debate. Now, this came after RFK Jr. appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast, and Dr. Hotez decided to tweet something antagonistic about it. And now users are chiming in saying, well, how about you just sit down and show us where we got it wrong? Now, this is one of JFK Jr.'s big lines is when he's challenged on his vaccine research, he says, show me where I got it wrong. Most of the time, people do not take the opportunity to do that. So we have Dan Cohen with us because he is a redacted correspondent and because he has been warning us about this Dr. Hotez for a long time. So, Dan, would you like to provide some context for this story? Remind us who this dude is and what should we be watching around this debate?
Well, obviously, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a threat to Biden, threat to the establishment. He's going on all the podcasts, all the big shows, and he's pointing out that all the basically all the so many flaws with Biden, with the Biden administration, what he'd do differently. And one of his big things, of course, is vaccine safety, which is a key issue, of course, over the last few years. And Robert F. Kennedy and his organization, Children's Health Defense, have provided a ton of information on vaccine safety and really become kind of an obsession of the Biden administration, of Big Pharma, to discredit and destroy him. So when he announced, he was called a kook, a conspiracy theorist, an anti-vaxxer by basically all of the mainstream media. And then he went on Rogan's show, which is, of course, far more popular than CNN or MSNBC. And Rogan says, well, let's have a debate between you and Peter Hotez. And Hotez has appeared repeatedly on Rogan's podcast. And Hotez rejects it online and starts this incredible Twitter storm where I would say he really lost. I mean, he was exposed as a fraud, as basically refusing to debate. He just wants to go on friendly shows. The only show he actually went on since this whole thing exploded is MSNBC to talk with Mehdi Hasan. Let's watch this clip.
But in science, we don't typically do debates. What we do is we write scientific papers, we present our findings in front of a critical audience of our peers to solicit their input and suggestions. But one doesn't typically debate science, maybe the one-off discussion of evolution versus creationism and that sort of thing. But that's not what we do in science.
So there, Mehdi Hasan provides the softball interview where he's already agreeing with him all the way through for Peter Hotez, where Peter Hotez says, well, I don't do debates. Scientists don't do debates, as if that is a rule of science. Meanwhile, he's just going on television all the time, whether on MSNBC or CNN or Fox or BBC, any of these outlets, on a near daily basis for the past 3 years. Well, that's not really typically a thing doctors do either, but there's no hard and fast rules. So what Peter Hotez wants is to only go on channels where he will not be challenged. I mean, the only time he's ever been challenged is when he went on Rogan last time in the infamous clip where he was asked about his general eating habits and health habits. Do you exercise? And, do you eat well? And he admitted that he eats horrible and he never exercises. And he was exposed. He was embarrassed. And Rogan said, well, you just want people to inject themselves with chemicals. But I mean, the bigger point is that the problem is not, to me, that Peter Hotez doesn't want to debate. The problem is that Peter Hotez wants to take anyone who questions or dissents from the sort of COVID biosecurity state regime that's been rolled out really throughout the past 3 years and actually criminalize them, put them in prison. He has made clear in his articles, in his media appearances, he wants the Biden administration, the UN, the World Health Organization, NATO to combat what he calls anti-science aggression, which is just a term he made up to describe anyone who he doesn't like, and he wants it to be illegal. So he doesn't want to debate RFK or Rogan or Elon Musk or Tucker Carlson, the four people that he listed as, these dangerous minds, he wants to actually criminalize them. He wants to lock them up, apparently.
Yeah.
So it's just an incredibly dangerous proposal, and the fact that he has so much institutional power behind him, whether from the Gates Foundation, the U.S. government, U.S. aid. He's a charlatan, a fraud, and really a dangerous character.
Right. You mentioned that he's received money from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which funds and benefits from vaccines around the world, in addition to the COVID vaccine, more than that. Can you remind us a little bit more about the piece you did? I mean, you warned us about this guy 4 months ago, so we credit you for that. And can you just, so we don't have to seek it back out, remind us more of his compromising financial ties?
Well, if you look at the history of Peter Hotez, going back to his earliest days, the earliest documented history of him in the 1980s, he was paid by Pfizer coming out of school. He not long after got more Pfizer money. Then eventually he got hooked up with the Clinton Global Initiative, and so that connected him to the Gates Foundation, where he's gotten millions and millions of dollars from Bill Gates. You can here. Let's show this clip of Bill Gates actually saying that Peter Hotez is a key partner.
One of the foundation's key partners is Professor Peter Hotez, who's doing inspiring work on tropical diseases, and we're very excited about being able to back some breakthroughs there and have a huge impact.
So Peter Hotez gets tapped into Gates Money Foundation, and then that turns into U.S. aid. That turns into U.S. aid money. So the Bush administration, and then the Obama administration, with Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, turned something called neglected tropical diseases into a gigantic industrial complex. Neglected tropical diseases, all that means is diseases and maladies that you get from lack of sanitation. So human hookworm is one of them. There are a number of them, and they result from lack of sanitation, lack of clean water. So this is in impoverished, exploited third world countries that have been pillaged by the US and Europe for centuries, and that's why they're underdeveloped. And meanwhile, the Bill Gates and Peter Hotez, instead of saying, well, okay, let's put our billions of dollars into helping these countries develop their infrastructure, well, instead they want to just say, no, we're just going to try to create basically medical treatments, injections, in order to stop these maladies, but it never actually stops them. It just, at best, it treats them. So it's permanently producing income. So that's what he was doing all through the 1990s, 2000s, into the 2010s. He got involved with Ebola in the Obama administration, deploying the U.S. military into Liberia to stop the Ebola crisis, which was not really a crisis at all. It was just portrayed that way. And then onto the COVID era. So throughout his entire career, he has represented the big pharma and the biopharma security complex that was rolled out through COVID, to the point where he cites Russian disinformation and says Putin is, behind all of this anti-vax sentiment, and therefore we have to censor. So you can see he's really not so much a medical professional, he's more of a political operative.
Clearly, because a tweet like this, which he tweeted about this podcast episode, saying that Spotify has stopped even sort of trying to stem vaccine misinformation and it's just awful, but he doesn't want to debate it, that makes it kind of like a drive-by shooting. Like, I'm just going to, throw some stuff at it so that no one even considers or believes it, and then keep going. And even as, someone who's followed the science around COVID, I found the interview with Joe Rogan, between RFK Jr. and Joe Rogan, shocking because of the litigation history that RFK Jr. has. So it feels like what all he's trying to do is divert attention away from RFK Jr., and it may have backfired.
I think it backfired pretty spectacularly. If you look, overall, I mean, like you said, a few months ago, I was trying to bring attention to Peter Hotez so people could see who he is and the powerful figures he's tied to. I think we did a pretty decent job here at Redacted, but I mean, I'd say it's a big own goal for Hotez over the weekend because he did not look like a calm, rational person. He looked aggressive and dismissive against someone like Rogan, who has had him on repeatedly before. You know, Rogan has both sides on. He has establishment figures, he has anti-establishment figures, and everything in between for long form conversations, as long as it needs to go. So he's trusted by millions and millions of Americans. So for Hotez to dismiss that, flush it away, I think millions of people now see Peter Hotez for who he really is that didn't before.
Do you think there's like, if we're going to put let's take some odds on it of a debate actually happening, because the pot continues to grow from influencers who are pledging funds. Now it's at about 2.62 million of users on Twitter. So I don't know. I'm going to say 8% chance it happens. What about you?
I'm going to give it a 0% chance. Okay. There is no way Hotez will debate. He cannot handle it. He cannot handle any debate. That's why he only goes on MSNBC to talk with Mehdi Hasan, who's, you know, another shill. He only goes on, if there is Pfizer money in your podcast or your show, he will go there. That's where he'll go. You know, but if it's an actual open debate, he cannot handle it. I mean, if anyone watched the report we did for Redacted, that's just like a list of, you could just ask him one question after the next. I mean, someone could ask him, which of course Mehdi Hasan won't do, ask him about how the Indian government approved his Corbavax vaccine by ignoring the concerns of its own top regulatory body and just skipping over the testing process altogether while they got it into the arms of tens of millions of adolescents and children in India. That should be a huge scandal, but it will never be talked about in mainstream media or anywhere that Peter Hotez goes. He's so scandal-ridden and so paper-thin, he cannot handle any kind of debate. So he just smears and distorts, and that's his only tactic.
All right. So did you watch Game of Thrones? Do you know Game of Thrones?
I did.
Okay, so you know how Tyrion Lannister asked for the trial by combat and then has somebody else stand in for him?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, against the mountain. Anyway,
yes.
Do you think that these people who are pledging money would take anybody else in place of Dr. Hotez? Like, could we have someone else maybe for this, and someone who's trusted pro-vaccine?
I mean, I could do it. I know Hotez's positions pretty well. I mean, I could go be in and Hotez, and I know how to defend them too because I know his weaknesses, you know. So I could, you know. So I mean, if anyone wants to do that, I could be the stand-in for Hotez.
Okay, you are the Oberon of this, but it doesn't end well for him. He gets his face smashed in by fingers.
That's true. Just like it wouldn't end well for Hotez in a debate or any unfortunate soul who had to stand in and defend his indefensible positions.
Okay. All right. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But this was an interesting turn of events. So thanks for warning us in advance about this and bringing more context to this debate. I really appreciate it, Dan.
Thanks a lot, Natalie. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.